Hi guys. All right, so this is the video for lesson 12 for our Treasure Island unit. It's going to be a short video. I just have a checklist again like previous lesson, like lesson 5. I did it like this just because it's all stuff that you guys are going to be doing independently. So you don't need me guiding you through the steps. So I just made this checklist again and I'll explain what you're going to be doing for the lesson, but then it's up to you guys to go ahead and do it, okay? So for lesson 12, you first need to reread chapter 8 in your reader on pages 72 to 79. So chapter 8 was, I think it's titled My Life Hangs in the Balance. Yeah, My Life Hangs in the Balance. Starts on page 72. So that was the one where Jim Hawkins is stuck with Long John Silver and the other pirates, and he's trying to kind of bargain for his life, and him and Long John Silver have this plan, and then they begin to go and look for the treasure because it turns out Long John Silver had the real map somehow. So they find that weird skeleton with his arms pointing out, and he's kind of pointing towards where the treasure's at. So that was that chapter. First thing you have to do is reread that. Okay. After you've reread that chapter, you have to do the comprehension questions in your workbook. It's on page 105 and 106. So on page 105, looks like this. It's just the same kind of comprehension questions to test whether or not you understood that chapter. For some of them, you do have to write what page number you found the information on. So that's what page in the reader you found your answer, okay? So have your reader open to chapter 8 while you complete this. There's only a couple, it's front and back. There's only 6, okay? Front and back. So after you reread the chapter, then you finish the comprehension questions in your workbook. After that, in the workbook, there are some take-home pages. They are optional. You do not have to do them. You can. There's an excerpt from the chapter on the first take-home page. It's 107 through 109. So it's just after you finish the comprehension questions over here as the take-home pages. It's optional. You can skip it. It's just an excerpt and then some vocabulary activities. So it's up to you. Do it if you want to. And then the last thing for this lesson is continuing our writing. So back a couple lessons, you guys began the introduction to your adventure stories. So your introduction was supposed to hook the reader, introduce your setting, and introduce your main character. So hopefully you have that written somewhere, and hopefully you've saved it in a safe spot and you know exactly where that is. So read through what you wrote for your introduction, and now you're writing the body of your story, okay? So on your workbook, page 59, was our shape of a story page that looked like this. It was like the action climbing, or it kind of begins, it's not really climbing at all, but the introduction happens, and this is what you've already written. You already wrote the introduction. Now for the body, you can introduce your problem, and then it's these 3 points that are the body of the story. So like the main chunk of your story is what you're going to start writing today. You don't have to finish writing it today, but you're going to begin it at least. So you have to introduce what the problem is if you haven't already in your introduction. And then these were the rising action points. So what are the small problems leading up to the big problem? And the climax of the action, like the turning point in the story, doesn't have to happen yet. You don't have to write that today, because there should be quite a bit of action happening before we get to the main big problem, the big fight between the pirates, right? There should be little issues happening in your story that lead up to that, okay? So like in Treasure Island, it'd be like Jim overhearing the pirates talk in the apple barrel and figuring out that he's stuck on a ship with a bunch of pirates. And then when they get to the island and the first fight happens, they're in the stockade and stuff. And then Jim gets the little ship, Ben Gunn's little boat, and takes it up to the Hispaniola ship and tries to take the ship. Okay, so there's a lot of little action happening in the story before the main event, pretty much, okay? That's the rising action that leads to our climax. So the climax, the top of our peak here in action, that does not come until the end of the body of the story. So kind of you're writing the body of the story, like this part. Don't worry about the big crazy action just yet. Just kind of the smaller problems that are leading up to the big problem. That's what you're writing today. You're going to begin drafting the body of your story, this part. And on the previous page, that was on 59, by the way, if you need to see it. The previous page kind of explained some of those. So we labeled them before. B was the problem or conflict, and it says, what is the problem or conflict? For example, do any of the characters have enemies? If so, who are they? So that could be part of your problem. And then this was the rising action. We labeled them 1, 2, and 3. So you should have some information here about what your rising action was in your story that you had planned. So list 3 challenges the characters face. For example, how does the weather challenge the characters? Do they have a shelter or must they build it? Where do they get food and water? Have they met anyone else? So those were just some ideas for things that could happen in your story. Okay, and then we're not here yet. Not the worst thing that happens to your characters yet, not the climax. So don't worry about that yet. The body of your story is going to be mostly this information. So it's all the little things leading up to the big thing. So kind of put them in order from like least exciting up to most exciting in your story. And you're writing it in sequential order, so it's just what's happening next in your story. You've introduced the characters, the setting, kind of got us hooked. Then what? So you're writing the main chunk of your story. So there's the introduction, there's the body, the rest of it, and then the conclusion is a short part at the end. But you're writing the big chunk of the story, all the middle chapters, okay? So your introduction should have been 1 or 2 paragraphs. That's what we had planned. The body of your story should be like at least 4 paragraphs. Okay, remember we're trying to write a 2-page story, at least. Like it should be way longer than that, but at least 2 pages. So if your introduction, where you hooked your readers, introduced everyone, just this part, just your introduction, was 1 or 2 paragraphs. So introducing your problem and all these rising action points, I think should be at least 4 paragraphs. Okay, maybe 1 for each. We're stuck on an island, or we're stuck in the desert, or in the Rockies and it's a blizzard. Okay, what's the problem? And then what are the little challenges your character's facing? That could be 1 paragraph, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs. Just right there, okay? You can make them longer, but I think 4 is probably the minimum. And that's it. So, checklist. Reread chapter 8. Do the comprehension questions on the workbook pages. If you want to do the take-home page, you don't have to, because you have a lot of writing to do. You have to write the body of your adventure story. So try and think of suspense and action and adventure, okay? Is it a story you would want to read? So try and make it exciting. It can be scary. It can be, negative things could be happening to your character. Like negative things are happening to Jim in the story. It's still exciting though. So just think of what kind of challenges you want to put your character through. What are they going to overcome to get to their ending, their happy ending after the climax of your story, okay? So that's it. If you guys have questions, let me know. But that's the whole video for lesson 12. Now you guys have work to do. Have fun. Bye.